Hi, Todd Nash, the president of the Oregon Cattleman Association. I'm here today with Rodger Huffman. He's our brand and health committee chair. And there's a few things that are out there, Rodger, that I wanted to talk to today. But for the purposes of introduction, do you want to introduce yourself, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Rodger Huffman. I was born and raised here in Union County, in Uniontown, a little town of Union, and started a part-time brand inspector when I was in my 20s, and that turned into a full-time career, actually. And after 31 years and 20 of that in Salem, I retired a few years back and came back to home country, and here I am out in my field.
Well, really appreciate you staying involved with cattlemen's and one of the things that you always were, even when you worked for the state, you were one of us. And I refer to it as a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's, you always were just one of us. And I really appreciated that. And uh, working for an agency that was geared toward supporting cattlemen, it was nice to have a friend there. So, but now in the status that you're in, you recently had a trip to Reno to the NCBA convention to talk about traceability, and I wanted to visit a little bit about that today, what traceability is and where we might be going with it.
All right. Well, yeah, Todd, thank you for the little blip there. I think that's what's more that's needed at the agency level is somebody that has some practical experience that can actually tell them how silly some of the ideas are and how they'll play out and how effective they'll work. And I guess that's a good segue into this topic, because traceability is kind of like the word sustainability. It's its own meaning to different people. It's like the 5 people you ask what a heifer head is. Traceability in the NCBA, from the aspect that they're approaching it, is at a policy level for themselves, for the cattle industry, and their association particularly. Along with USDA, USDA is heavily involved, has been in the proposals over the years in laying that out. And so right now, that's the focus of this side group, you might say, a special task force that's been meeting regularly since March. We'll meet until the annual convention in February. And hopefully their goal is to have a pretty solid and supported policy on traceability in place that will help, I think, producers in guidance, and also help USDA understand where the industry is on that topic.
Okay. And so representing Oregon cattlemen's, what are Oregon cattlemen's in our position, and what are you trying to do to help represent us?
Well, we have a couple of resolutions on file for the association. So of course I'm honoring that. And I find myself doing similar to what I did when I was with the agency. And that is probably more listening to the people from all over the United States that are on this with varying backgrounds, and probably more pointing out how the ideas that they're proposing may play out and how effective or useful they are. And for me, it does go back to my career, and that is, if it's a burden to most of the industry, and it really in the end doesn't accomplish much of anything, in this case, does it make the traceability of those animals that have been untraceable in a disease outbreak over the years is the big question. And I guess we're still working through that, but I'm insistent that we're not adopting a policy that is looks like it's really effective and is a big deal, but yet all of those law-abiding, compliant producers that will jump on and do this, there has to be some value there to them, and if there is no marketing value or increased traceability and disease outbreak, then it's just another exercise, I guess, in some sense. And so that's kind of my goal, is to, I guess, keep the topic narrowed down to adopting something that's useful and effective.
Okay. Well, one of the threats and one of the reasons for doing traceability, we have a number of diseases, anywhere from brucellosis to hoof and mouth disease. And one of the threats out there, hoof and mouth disease, is in Indonesia right now, and thinks that possibly could spread to nearby mainlands or into Australia, and so that becomes some of the marching orders. Is we have to have this in order to have containment, so that we don't shut down the whole United States beef chain, and that argument is pertinent. And but some of the stumbling blocks, and you've dealt with it as a brand inspector firsthand. What does that look like if we have an outbreak, and how would these EID tags be able to help get back to those herds and be able to quarantine just those that are affected?
Well, that's a great question. I was actually in charge of all of the livestock programs at ODA at the time of the mad cow outbreak in Washington, the cow that stole Christmas. We had, of course, I was in Washington, and all of the information was coming to and through me for that. So I guess in this case, luckily, I have some experience in how that would play out. And traceability, I understand how this could be useful. I think that also looking at the international markets, it's no different than our state-to-state guidance. We can do what we think is best for the world, and the world can say, no, it's not good enough, and still shut our border. So that's how important this topic is. And I think, looking back on that, we tested a 25,000 head dairy because there was cows that were sold for slaughter animals in Washington at an auction market, bought by secondary traders and auction markets, and then sent back through the back door to dairies in Oregon. Paperwork said they went to slaughter. They didn't. Traceability. So that caused us to go out and go through and check every ID on the 25,000 head, looking for those Washington animals. And then, of course, all of, putting more ID. So that particular scenario is what I was talking about earlier. And that's important, that the traceability discussion talk about effectiveness. And if you have, in like that case, if you have secondary buyers that are taking the ID off of those cows or cattle, and then moving them to somewhere where they can get more money than they would for slaughter, then that's the hole that we need to concentrate on, because there was a lot of lost traces in that scenario of cattle that went there, were destined to a slaughter plant. Of course, they pull all the ID off at the slaughter plant. Those cows never showed up. Those are the lost traces we're talking about. And I will continue to represent that we are doing something that's effective In other words, holding those people that are pulling the ID off and rebranding those animals accountable, so that we're improving the traceability and the tracing effectiveness.
Okay, thank you. A very complex issue. You know it better than anybody, and appreciate you swinging away and representing us there. I want to change subjects just a little bit, but it's kind of on the same vein. Brucellosis. So brucellosis in Oregon, we've been brucellosis free for some time now. You probably have an exact number, but we continue to give shots. It doesn't prevent the cattle from getting brucellosis, but it prevents abortions, basically the symptoms. So we at our mid-year meeting decided that we were going to pursue maybe a legislative fix, because we're mandated at this time to give brucellosis shots in the state of Oregon. Do you want to talk about what that might look like and the ramifications of that?
Well, yeah, that particular topic is, yeah, an interesting one in that vein, because the last brucellosis case, also I was in charge in Salem when that was happening. That was about 26 years ago, 7 years ago. John Casey out of Nevada had some cattle in down around Chiloquin that were, and again, they were mismanaged. They were running all over the country. We bled, oh, I don't know, tens of thousands of neighbors' cattle because those cattle had contact with them. But in the case of brucellosis, you know, we had meetings also with Canada and have, I'm sure they continue to have. Canada's said all along for at least 20 years, all right, you guys say you're brucellosis free. Well, then why don't you quit vaccinating? I mean, that's the real proof. If you don't have it, then you don't need to vaccinate for it. And so that's the question they pose to us. And we've talked about it in the cattle industry before. I've been to those cattlemen's meetings, and we've talked about it. In the end, we've left the law as it was, but it's maybe definitely appropriate to revisit that and see what the risks are at this time. For a long time, there wasn't any known risk in the West really from the brucellosis until there was those pocket of elk and bison in Yellowstone, in the greater Yellowstone area, that have tested positive in slaughter scenarios. So those areas, including Oregon, is holding cattle that graze in those areas where the elk are known to have it and the buffalo. There's a possibility of spread. So it's important in those areas that even though we don't have any in the beef industry per se, we do have it in species in the United States that are capable of spreading it. And so it's important for those greater Yellowstone cattle that commingle with those animals, that they remain protected, which then allows us more protection in the surrounding states. We've done quite a good job here nationally in cutting the effects of brucellosis and the effects of the vaccine. We went from a strain 19, which caused a lot of false positives, to a RB51, which reduced the false positives, much more, I guess, useful and less burdensome to the industry. But I guess the question that you posed and we'll be looking at is if we don't have any animals that really leave, or like in the case of the stuff in Southern Oregon that goes south, that's not at a risk. And we don't have animals that go from Oregon to the greater Yellowstone area for wintering or for summer pasture. So our risk level is extremely low. It's certainly a topic worth seeing if the industry will support, and the state veterinarian is very open to this discussion. and we'll figure out something this fall to get geared up for that.
Okay, well, thank you, Rodger. Rodger, I'm going to leave the last little bit here to you, but these are big topics. You know, we have mandatory brucellosis vaccines right now in the state of Oregon. Some people don't even know that, but we are mandated to do that. We're talking about a mandatory traceability on a national level. And so if people want to weigh in, and so that you can fully represent them to the best of your ability and contact you, what is the best way to do that?
Well, as you know, probably not through email. I gave up the technology when I left Salem. Cell phone, the Cattleman's magazines have my phone number. Either call or text me and I'll call you back. Definitely want input and people's input and discussion and skill levels and their experiences, because we only know what we know, and there's people that, as we know, on the some of the other major topics, there's people that are having much more broad experience in issues. So that's a great thing for them to get a hold of me. I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Again, thank you, Rodger. Appreciate a lifetime of service to Cattleman, and we're really thankful and that you're there to help us out even now. So have a good day.
Todd, you don't mind if I include one topic?
Go ahead.
Sure. On the brand inspection, which is part of this this meeting, we have again, we have a kind of a change we definitely have a change in leadership. We don't have any state program managers, so we're looking for somebody that will probably come in this fall. But for sure, I want people that are looking at this to know that there's been legislation passed, and there's been discussion and positions adopted by OCA that will include support for minimal fee increases in the brand inspection, along with a continued reliance, I guess, on looking at ways to make sure that we're efficient and effective with the money we give them. So I want everybody to know there will be a small fee increase coming this fall in the brand inspection fees.
Yeah, thanks, Rodger. I think 15 cents per brand inspection, and then there's a service fee as well as increases in there.
Yeah, 15 cents per head, and service fee is a $10 increase in the service fee.
Okay. Well, again, I'll do this again. Rodger, thank you so much for serving and lifetime dedication to Cattleman, and we're very fortunate to have you here. And so with that, have a good day, and thanks for getting on here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.